Thanks, Kieran, and yeah, good luck for the Eels on Friday night against North Queensland. Can I just firstly start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. The Darug people, very important. We do have the Darebin Aboriginal Land Council, it's a member of ours, and we often get them to welcome us, but they weren't available today. Can I just start a couple of bits of housekeeping? There are blues out there. Our events are normally Chatham House Rule. But as you can see by the cameras, this one's not. So anything you say could well be recorded and broadcast, and someone else might see it. So be aware of that. I wanted to really acknowledge Jennifer Westacott and the Business Council of Australia. We've done a couple of these events together, and we think it's great for a regional advocacy group to partner with a national business advocacy group and bring the members together and see where we can kind of work together. And we started 10 years ago. We only have one aim, which is how do we shift the needle on jobs in Western Sydney and kind of all of the advocacy we do. The first thing we were involved in actually was a campaign around Western Sydney Airport back when it was so unpopular. We'd have meetings and you'd bring up mayors and they'd sort of say, "Oh, come along, but don't tell anyone." Well, now it's all turned around, and we've got people like Jennifer kind of leading the show there with the authority, and we're just so excited to see those opportunities. I also wanted to thank Deloitte. You can't build a successful city without successful companies. You can't build a successful region without great companies. And I've got to say, Deloitte are the one particular company I always point out in the professional services sense that everyone came in the 80s when Parramatta was a thing, and most of them left, and Deloitte didn't. So, and they're now the largest, and they've done a lot of great work advocating, frankly, for the region. And something that we had a little dinner last night with Jennifer, and we talked about the importance of business voices, and that the community actually does accept that business represent many workers, shareholders, stakeholders. And if they don't talk out, sometimes we get irrational policy. So I wanted to acknowledge Deloitte. That's really all I had to say. And I'd like to invite the next speaker, which is Fiona Webb, Partner, National Leader, Global Employer Services, Deloitte, to come and talk to you.
I think I'm going for the longest title ever there. Thank you so much for the introduction, David, and the opportunity to be here with all of you in this incredibly vibrant and exciting location. Western Sydney has a history of entrepreneurship and skilled migration. The continued economic growth of Western Sydney is crucial to the growth and prosperity of both New South Wales and Australia. But businesses in the region need access to workers with the right skills and education to meet their future potential. And with the unemployment rate at 3.5% and labour force participation hovering near record highs of 66.4%, it's a significant challenge. One lever that we can pull to ease the critical skills shortage is migration. Migration has been and will continue to be core to our successful development as a country. Western Sydney is home to one of the most harmoniously multicultural populations in the world, giving unparalleled advantage in terms of labour, market and global connectivity. So let's think about the success of Western Sydney through the lens of migration. There are three key factors. The first is considering Australia's attractiveness as a destination for migrants and the flow-on impact to Western Sydney. An unfortunate consequence of the COVID era Fortress Australia policy is that Australia's brand has been tarnished globally. We need to proactively engage with the rest of the world about the future of Australia and our attractiveness as a destination. It is anticipated that there will be 900,000 fewer people in Australia by mid-2025 than forecast pre-pandemic. With migration policies changing around the world, Australia is engaged in a global war for talent. And this is especially critical in Western Sydney. 60% of migrants that come to Australia come to Western Sydney. So there's a twofold challenge: getting skilled migrants to Australia and ensuring that they continue to settle in Western Sydney. The second key factor is Australia's immigration system supporting the Western Sydney economy. 1/3 of businesses in Western Sydney have difficulty finding suitable staff. Some of the Western Sydney businesses I work with have had to reduce manufacturing lines, bus routes, and close aged care beds because they simply don't have enough workers. But Australia's immigration system is complex. Our documentary requirements are onerous. And our work visa program is not aligned to our current skill needs. We're failing to capture job categories that are on the cutting edge of the new economy and jobs that can ensure that businesses can continue to operate. The longevity and success of Western Sydney requires population growth. Businesses need access to workers with the right skills and education to meet their future potential. Western Sydney is forecast to grow by 1 million residents over the next 30 years. Migration will continue to play a key role, in conjunction with continued investment in infrastructure. An important talent and attraction and retention tool for businesses is the ability to offer skilled migrants a pathway to permanent residence. As an example, under the current migration system, occupations in high demand in Western Sydney, such as health and welfare service manager or cafe and restaurant manager, have no pathway to permanent residence under skilled migration. The Jobs and Skills Summit outlined some fantastic recommendations to address skills shortages and strengthen the migration system. But the hard work starts now. So what will solidify Western Sydney as a frontier economy? Economic investment, innovation across all areas of business, and the right skills, education, and migration. Thank you so much.
Advanced manufacturing enables Australia to compete with the rest of the world, and technology is an enabler for that. So advanced manufacturing skills, technology allows Australian industry to compete with the rest of the world, provide goods and services that really will make the world a better place and allow our economy to grow.
At Romar Engineering in Western Sydney, what we'll do is we'll get somebody who has just researched something that is looking to take it to market, right? So it doesn't matter the sector, biomedical, transportation, rail, space, we deal with all of them. It's just a matter of, taking it from that early stage. This works, but we need to make it at scale and on budget. So we started a partnership with GE right in the middle of the pandemic, 2021. We realized that we had all of the skills required to go down the path of laser powder bed fusion for additive manufacturing and bring on that capability that is in high demand in Australia that few have the skills to operate.
Romar Engineering is a great Western Sydney business, a great Australian business, and we've been working with Romar for a couple of years now, helping them onboard new technology like the additive 3D printing machine that's behind me, and enabling them and supporting them on their journey to be able to apply this technology for new products and enter global supply chains.
Our partnership with GE allowed us to scale up because we can go from art to part. So our engineers could go from prototype to production super quick.
The applications of additive technology are really, really interesting. You can create products that are lighter, that are cheaper, that are more durable than any other manufacturing methods. So in our case, for General Electric, we create fuel nozzles for jet engines. They are particularly designed for certain types of aerodynamics. They can withstand high pressures and high temperatures, and we can produce them at a fraction of the weight and a fraction of the cost of other manufacturing methods.
I just like making parts, honestly. Like when it comes down to it, like the best part of manufacturing is I have an idea and I'm holding a part. And there's nothing better than going from that art to part, holding that concept in your hand and finding those small things, interrogating your ideas or whatever assumptions you made to get to that point, and then refine it on and on. So that's always what keeps me excited. It keeps the fire lit and burning bright. And hopefully we're good enough to pass that on to future generations.
I get to do a massive variety of things. I've done some plumbing to create a test rig. I've motor actuated a throttle valve, which is pretty crazy. I do mechatronics engineering, but I was given the opportunity to create a a computational fluid dynamics workflow for the company, which was really difficult. I get given a lot of difficult projects, but it's very valuable experience, and I think that's why I like working here. I'm always challenged, and I'm given something new.
Well, Australia still makes things, and people have, I think, a bit of an old-fashioned view about manufacturing. They think that the world of manufacturing is you produce something in one place, you know, a plane in one place, a car in one place. You think about where the A380 is made, you think about where cars are made. Different countries are involved in producing different things in that production chain. That's the modern world of manufacturing. And so companies that specialise in particular components, they'll be able to kind of sell those across the world and enter into these huge supply chains, particularly as that Asian middle class grows to 3.5 billion people. So, you know, the world of manufacturing is now not about cheap labour, it's about high skilled people, it's about specialist production, it's about making those specialist parts. And in Western Sydney, you see that over and over again, companies doing that specialist work into those big supply chains. And when you start scaling it up in defence, in space, in science, you know, the opportunities for Australia are simply huge.
Western Sydney is setting itself to be the regional hub for advanced manufacturing. We have an incredibly skilled workforce. We have some of the best research organisations in the world in Western Sydney. And we have great businesses like Romar Engineering that are looking not only to service our local supply chains, but service global supply chains. So I'm really confident that Western Sydney will be a regional hub for additive and advanced manufacturing.
It's a fantastic collaboration. Let's hear some more about it. Please welcome to the stage. We've got Jennifer Westacott, the Chief Executive of the BCA, Sam Maresh, GE Country Lead, Steve Milanowski, as you heard there from Romar Engineering, welcome, and Andrea Culligan from Deloitte Space. Please put your hands together. Let's start, Jennifer, with you and the notion of a frontier economy. In many respects, while we're talking about the opportunities for Western Sydney, already it's a case study, isn't it, of the success that can be achieved?
Absolutely. If you think about what's a frontier economy, well, it's an economy that's at the cutting edge of technology. It's at the cutting edge of creating new value, the cutting edge of creating new opportunities, the cutting edge of using existing strengths and going to new adjacencies and scaling those up. And it's at the cutting edge of making sure that you've got the best and brightest people and you're utilising their skills and capabilities. And it's the place where you're thinking 20 years, 30 years into the future. You're not thinking about the next few months. That's Western Sydney. You know, the third largest economy in the country, which I think most people just don't know. A huge manufacturing base already, magnificent institutions, educational institutions, the future home of CSIRO, which will come to Bradfield. You know, these are all of the capabilities, and of course, a 24/7 fully digital airport that will be Australia's largest airport, curfew-free, that will just be able to access not just manufactured products, but high-value agribusiness products. So all of the ingredients are already starting to kind of really take effect. And I think it's not just about Western Sydney powering up Western Sydney. I think Western Sydney as a frontier economy will push Australia to the frontier, and that's the challenge of scaling it to that extent.
Sam, to you, because often we talk to SMEs and they'll say how their technology is super exciting and they're on this path, but it must be exciting for you to engage with a company like theirs.
It's just fabulous. It really is. And Steve and Romar, you know, just amazingly skilled engineers, amazingly skilled businesses. And we're just an enabler. We bring technology, we bring experience to the table, but we need partners who actually develop and deliver the outcomes. So yeah, it is incredibly exciting. And to Jennifer's point, I think no one should miss the opportunity here. Technology is shifting so quickly, and the elements of success are here. They're here with the new airport. They're here with skills. We need capital. We need skills. We need markets. We've got all of those things here in Western Sydney.
Steve, we spoke beforehand about how Romar Engineering has had to pivot, reinvent, 4 or 5 times through its history, and now it's a massive one underway.
Yeah, the most recent one is probably the biggest shift of all. So going from injection molding, making the tools, to doing the injection molding, and then to being a niche injection molder for biomedical components. So like the IVF components we make here in Australia. this last one, embracing additive technologies, getting skilled migrants to help us to staff, and then training that next generation of local talent here in Australia.
Andrea, how do you see this sort of collaboration, and does it have lessons for other sectors, other areas?
Yeah, 100%. If we think about one of the most emerging issues of our time, which is around climate change, and we'll use space as an example of the implication and the support structure. Earth observation, 50% of our climate indicators are based off of Earth observation. Now, that technology, whilst it's initially considered space, has downstream applications that can be used here on ground. And so we see Earth observation not only impacting our ability to look at remote asset management, but also things like how do we remotely validate insurance claims, and how do we then use that same technology that has the same manufacturing style of process here on ground in order to test things like moisture and predictive farming. So, you know, there is so many applications around advanced manufacturing. Space is, of course, one of them, and of course it can have an impact towards climate as our biggest challenge that we're facing in Western Sydney is being applied around that significantly.
And Steve, on that space question, some of your products are done to the specifications of NASA. You've got the highest end products being manufactured in Sefton, Western Sydney.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, to speak to what you were getting at earlier, if you look at the shuttle program back in the 70s and 80s, what are all the technologies that bled out of that into adjacent industries, right? And that's the seed for which we're starting now. Like, we've identified fluid motion controls as a potential large growth market for Railmart that could really catapult us in both size and revenue. But I think the bigger one is really the impact of additive and how we can make a difference to other industries. You know, I met somebody earlier for rail, right? If you look at Germany, they're using additive in rail left, right, and center, and those are the types of concepts we can help to implement here in Australia.
That's basically 3D printing.
Yeah, sorry, 3D printing, yes.
Yeah. Just interested, Jennifer, if you could pick up on Andrew's point, because I think that scope is of sharing, of using knowledge in one space across another, from small to big business. How do we engender that in a greater way in Western Sydney?
Well, there's a few things. The first is I think we need national focus areas, because you can't do this everywhere. Because if you do, you just dilute the effort. So I think we need institutions. Now, the institution I chair, the Western Parkland City Authority, will have an advanced manufacturing research facility, and that will be a way that we bring parties together, small businesses with large businesses, businesses with CSIRO, businesses with academic institutions, trying new things, scaling them up, and then obviously in Bradfield and the Aerotropolis more broadly is a lot of space. So one of the big attractions for many of the multinational companies is, hey, that's a greenfield site there. I can build like a world-class building there. I don't have to sort of cobble stuff together. That's hugely attractive. Oh, but well, now I'm not going to be next to a 24/7 airport. Hey, I've got all these skilled people. Suddenly your investment attraction opportunity is huge, and that just creates new opportunities for residents of Western Sydney. But I think the crucial thing is, from a national policy front, we need focus. We will need capital, because projects have to be de-risked. We are in a race, as Sam often says. There are many other places who want to do these things as well, but the kind of safety, security, skill base of Australia, its access to these big markets is a fabulous advantage, as well as the adjacencies we already have in terms of advanced manufacturing in Western Sydney. Those are the things we've just got to power up, and look, the New South Wales government's just doing, a fantastic job of this. I mean, they've really decided to play to this strength, and I really congratulate them for them. But we need that now coordinated across all levels of government.
Sam, I know that GE, you are getting in on the ground floor essentially with the Aerotropolis and everything associated with it, but how important is it that we look further afield? I mean, our market is one thing, but the region, entirely different.
Absolutely. I think the regional opportunities are just enormous, and we live in a part of the world that's got a huge growth market to Asia. I think the challenge we've got is we need to make sure, as I've said previously, this is a race. If people are sitting in Singapore talking about similar issues, what they don't have though is the mix of opportunities that I think Australia can bring, whether it be with renewable power, whether it be with really great institutions, research and academic institutions, the work that Jennifer's done with the Aerotropolis in building that architecture and infrastructure. But at the end of the day, we're a country of 25 million people. We sit on the doorstep of a region of billions of people. We really need to tap that market. So we really need to look north. And we need, I honestly believe Western Sydney, the work that's being done here, we will be the anchor for the region, and that should be the ambition.
Something that seems to jump out at me from the case study with you and Roma, but also looking at the various other strategies Jennifer's talking about, whether it be the manufacturing research or the education approach, it's about being nimble, isn't it? Because the technology is changing so fast.
The technology is just astronomical. I mean, we've all lived through it with the pandemic, and we all went through this radical kind of change in work and lifestyle. But I mean, I spoke to Steve. We were speaking a couple of days ago about the technology that is in Roma today wasn't possible maybe 5 years ago. So this is the scale, and imagine then having to train the engineers who now need to work on a set of technologies that is cutting edge. I mean, this is a real race, and it's a race not only against our competitors, but it's a race to be nimble for the institutions, the flows of capital, for all of us really, and it's a huge collaboration effort. We none of us can do this without each other.
Andrea, what are your reflections on that in terms of having the workforce with the requisite skills to drive that advanced manufacturing we're talking about?
I think it comes into two components, and I always love this topic because I'm not university educated, but I had a very strong passion for bringing change to big problems. And so I started and built businesses my whole life, and now I have the ability to apply that commercial lens to very strong technology businesses and how we connect them into industry. So the importance of attracting people to STEM or advanced manufacturing or any type of future technology is about combining the ecosystem of skills, not just technologists. And I think sometimes we fail to recognize that, and that the importance of strategists, marketing, commercialization, artists, creativity, and how we bring that all collectively to actually create the sum of the parts is where we'll create value versus just having a myopic lens.
Steve, what are your thoughts on that, and how do we grapple with filling the gaps? I'm sure your business has to try and get people that know how to do the high-end manufacturing you're talking about. And where do we sit in terms of that skills piece?
Well, there's a few questions in there. I'll try to unpack it. Look, the first thing, and I say this to everybody, is advanced manufacturing is for everyone, right? So that's to speak to what Andrea was saying. And we do need the strategists. We need the business development executives. Like, we need the people that understand sales. We need the people that understand supply chain, right? Like, these are all crucial and make or break to a lot of businesses. Like, as an engineer first, and then an engineering manager second, I'm thinking of how to make things efficiently, how to get them done on cost, on budget. How do we add innovation? What's the next piece? But in a small business, you often have to wear many different hats, right? So that section that Andrea is saying, it can't be understated, right? As far as skills go, what we've found at Romar is that the engineering talent in Australia is very rich. So we have students from Macquarie, we have students from the University of Sydney. If we could multiply Sophie, like, we'd be fine. But what we've done is a bit different, and maybe it's a common point across other companies here in Australia, but we've gone to the migrant workforce for the specialized skills. So for our laser tech, which is an advanced combination, CNC machining and additive platform, 3D printing platform, we've had to go to Germany and grab like one of the world leading experts on that, and he works here in Western Sydney, right? And on the fluid and motion controls for valves. Like,
does he then bring the other engineers
no
along with him? No.
He comes out here and we supply him with eager engineers
You
that
can learn
have
from
good
him.
fundamentals.
Right.
And we say, this is the next you. We put him in his pocket, he follows them around. And they pick up on his skills that he's taken and developed over the last 5 to 8 years at one of the technical centers of additive, right? And that's how we kind of effect that success over the long term.
And how would a university feed into that if you could speak, so we have university representatives here, what needs to be done there to ensure that the next generation are equipped with that sort of micro credentialing?
Yeah, I think there's two primary pathways. I know commercialization and translation is always going to be a hot topic. It's not really one for me to discuss. But the second one is when it comes to students having access to this equipment, it's really critical. So Sophie at Romar, if she wants to print something, we really promote that. You have an idea, your shower broke and you want to print a new shower head. Design it, let's do that so it gives you the experience, right? In university, it's oftentimes focused on the physics, on the mechanics, on the process behind it, without the application. And that's really what we're doing is we're providing that exposure to application. So I think when it comes to university, what that role is, either A, supply that application sooner in a meaningful way, or two, partner with the small companies. It's great to have the large partnerships. Partner with the small companies that are doing those niche things, that are doing that innovative thing where you can learn at a faster rate.
Jennifer, tell us your vision on this, because I know this is a big part of, with the Aerotropolis, what you want to see evolve, those inputs.
Yeah, look, I think, so now I'm going to have a couple of hats on now because I'm the Chancellor-elect of Western Sydney University. But, what we've done at the Aerotropolis is create this new education and training model where an industry like Steve's will come and say, I need this kind of set of capabilities and skills. And then we'll be able to put that together by going to the universities, going to the TAFEs, blending that together in a series of micro-credentials, and then being able to create, what Andrea would call the kind of skills density that then sort of says to a company, okay, I've got enough of those skilled people to actually start to expand my business, because I can see the market. I mean, the market is enormous. There's no loss of opportunity here. The limiting factor is skills and capital. And so if we can get those two things right, then, there's no shortage of demand. So I think that the model we're doing in Western Sydney is to say industry will drive that with the universities, with the TAFEs, but we'll be bespoking stuff because, to Sam's point, the speed of adjustment, you just can't say to people, go off and do your 3-year whatever it was. You've got to say, actually, you need a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this, a bit of this. We're going to put that together, and we're also going to count the time people spend in companies like Steve's, because what we don't do is recognise that actually is a competency. And so that allows us to say, well, this person has actually got that competency from working in that company. They're actually skilled in additive printing. So it's a complete mindset change we need in the country, including that rethinking of migration settings, which was done at the summit. But I think, we are right at the cutting edge of Western Sydney to sort of get this model to kind of work in a way that you can scale up across the nation.
And Sam, I know you've had a fair bit of demand from universities for your hardware, for your technology.
Yeah, sure. The university sector are very keen to participate in advanced manufacturing. We've got some collaborations with a number of institutions, our equipment's in Ciro and elsewhere. And I think it's part of that journey in terms of, this evolution of technology is ongoing. So the powders that we use titanium alloys, or Steve uses titanium alloys. What's the next generation of material science that we use to create something even better? And then, of course, how does that get translated? What kind of skills do you need to actually be able to print it? So they're part of the ecosystem. And to the point around collaboration, you need, and I think Anna has kind of touched on it, you need the whole spectrum here. You need the researchers, you need the vocational education, you need the training, you need small businesses, you need some large businesses, you need capital, but the market's there.
Andrea, how much of it does it come down to sort of a cultural thing? With the US, there are always risk takers, embrace failure. How much is it a cultural thing that we need to try and be a bit more forward-leaning?
Well, I'm Canadian, but I'll take that one. No, look, I think, and we were speaking earlier, we're both from kind of Midwest-style environments. I'm from Alberta, which is a mining region, which has got lots of capital and, a very traditional mindset. And risk appetite in Australia is probably not as strong. And I think there is a huge lack of us being able to be a huge adopter. And if I think about, I'll refer back to climate, but climate change is our hugest opportunity, and if we can actually take advantage of it by 2070, we've got $680 billion more in the economy and another 250,000 jobs and a 3% GDP growth rate more than we would normally. So I think it's really about making clear choices, to Jennifer's point, around where we're going to focus, and also each state has its place to play. So, you know, Queensland and South Australia have opportunities for launch in space, as an example, but New South Wales has an opportunity for manufacturing. And with the very large defence bids that are coming into market, we see that space technology is very critically a part of that. And so, you know, we think about climate and what the downstream applications are and what the upstream applications are, and of course how that all comes together. But risk appetite, to your point, is definitely part of it. And I might just digress that there is value in thinking about both sides of the coin when it comes to manufacturing, and not just single application, which can reduce the risk challenges. And I use space technology, I kind of apply it to the example of whiskey and gin. So you probably get to know me a little bit on this panel, but whiskey takes time to age to create value, and space technology requires flight heritage in order for it to be commercially viable in sky. Gin has the exact same distilling process, but can be done in a day and sold on a shelf. And so when we start to look at manufacturing as an opportunity to apply to reduce risk, when we're thinking about the choices we're making and how we apply to multi-sectors and multi-opportunities, we reduce the risk and create the opportunity in value as well.
Steve, any reflections? As someone who has spent a fair bit of time in the US, I know it's SpaceX, and so how do you see the way our cultural prism operates in a commercial sense?
Yeah, look, it's you kind of live and breathe it to a different degree in America, right? So I came from SpaceX, and at any given time, like, that is probably one of the craziest breeding grounds for an engineer. If you have a question about anything, somebody has an answer, like, for sure, right? Here in Australia, smaller population, more specialized, it just doesn't exist the same way, so it's natural that the cultures are going to differ. At Romar, what we try to do is we do tend to be more Socratic with our methods. So when we talk to engineers, they come to us with solutions, not problems, right? This is an issue we have. Here's how I think I'm going to solve it, and that tends to motivate. It gives ownership, and that it's those small nudges that kind of change culture over a long period of time.
I'm going to get a few questions from the audience, so get some ready, please, and we'll get to you in a moment. But I just want to go to Jennifer before I go to the audience and talk to you about something that you've raised with me many times, and it's this sort of the lessons learned from a specific location piece focus. I think you touched on it earlier as well, but with Bradfield, with that new city, with Parramatta, with the CBD, we're talking about three specific hubs, aren't we?
Absolutely.
What are the benefits that are extracted from that approach?
Well, I think it's old-fashioned economics, the benefits of agglomeration. You know, you bring people together with like-minded focus, where they can start to exchange ideas, whether it's at, like when I was at Roma yesterday, the idea of your designer and your, I can't remember what the term of the other guy's job was.
Manufacturing engineering.
Manufacturing, sitting next to each other with a contest of ideas about, actually, well, that looks good on that design, but actually that probably won't work in practice. You've got to think about that happening at scale with lots of people doing that. And that's why Silicon Valley is just such an incredible success story, and it changed the dynamics of the American economy, like, dramatically. Think about the companies that were the top 10 companies in 1975 and the companies that are top 10 companies now. Silicon Valley changed America, changed its opportunity. And I think we've got to get that coordination. Not everybody can be a defence hub. Not everyone can be a medtech hub. We don't have that bigger scale. So we've got to get national coordination, national focus. But I would say, to the question about culture, we've got to also look at what we already do fantastically. Like, mining has been, like, people say mining is old economy. Mining is new economy. Mining is new economy, and it will be our saviour in the decarbonised world, because it will be able to leap across to the critical minerals and the critical technologies that are going to power up the renewable energy system. And it's got some of the most incredible technology and engineers and people and markets. Same with agriculture. You know, we're not just producing raw materials now, you know, we're advancing them, we're fine-tuning them, and the scalability of that with the airport in Western Sydney. You know, you think about, you send a kind of prime cut of meat versus you send kilo of beautifully crafted lamb chops for $75 a kilo. Start scaling that up into the supermarkets of Asia. Start doing the maths on what that's going to look like in terms of opportunities. That's the vision we need for the country. That sort of is sort of say, play to your strengths, build new capabilities. All of that requires collaboration across the country. But wherever you look at success stories around the world, places matter. You know, the UK with its catapults, the Germans after the war, creating the Fraunhofers, which changed the German economy, the South Koreans, you know, all of them have taken that approach of scale up at place because people like working together and they like collaborating and they like collaborating with institutions, and that's the opportunity.
Let's get a few questions from the audience. Yeah, ma'am? We'll just get the microphone over. If you could introduce yourself as well, that'd be great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Annette. I'm the Chief People Officer for Uniting. Just curious if you think that the trauma that the people of Western Sydney have just experienced has an impact on that vision that you're putting forward for Western Sydney.
Jennifer?
Well, you mean the lockdown trauma? Yeah, I don't think the lockdown trauma is unique to Western Sydney. I think, you know, if you talk to people in Melbourne, they'll have a better story to tell, I think, and a more severe one. You know, I think we can't look back now, but I do think we have to correct. So one of the things I've been pushing is that we do have to, particularly for young people who miss a lot of schooling, we've got to do some accelerator stuff. And, you know, we've got to help those young people catch up, particularly in the areas that we're talking about today. Because, you know, you think about some kids, particularly in Victoria, they can go to school for nearly 2 years on a regular instruction basis. That's okay for kids that have got families with Wi-Fi and who know how to use the laptop and who can problem solve with them. For kids who can't, whose parents aren't in that world, those kids, I suspect, when the NAPLAN tests come out next time, we'll see a big reduction. So let's not do that. Let's catch up now. But I think people are just getting on with their lives now. I think people are back in certainly in the Sydney, you know, in the major centres. You know, I was in Fairfield a few weeks ago. Heaps of people back in. You walk around Parramatta today. Lots of people are back in. I think people across the country still feel a bit of trauma, but I think they also just, you know, I think one of the things that you'd have to say about the New South Wales government was that they did trust people, and I think people trusted them in return, and I think they kind of got it back on track pretty quickly, and I think there's lessons to be learned across Australia about how we manage that. But you know, to be honest, I think people are just like, you know, they're glad to be back, they're glad to be collaborating again, and I think people are looking forward, and I think we've got to help create that vision and sort of help people kind of get that sense of optimism again, that, you know, the worst of this is hopefully behind us. The opportunities are huge ahead of us, and we're going to be with you, guiding you, helping you, not doing things to you, doing things with you, making sure that we can make sure you get the best opportunities in the world.
Yeah, this is speaking solely from a manufacturing standpoint, but there was a lot of manufacturing in Western Sydney, and during those lockdowns, well, yes, there was a lot of people that weren't able to go to the office. It was very hard for me to supplant a 20-ton machine into my backyard. So manufacturing was actually a lifeline for a lot of people, and we would see people at work. We had all of the protocols, and it was a huge drag, but at the same time, that still meant a lot for us to be manufacturing, and I think there's a lot of purpose that comes to the individual within manufacturing. So to me, that type of focus is I don't want to say impervious necessarily to those types of lockdowns, but it definitely isn't as impacted as other industries. So for us to grow it, it's almost a bit of a future-proof plan.
Let's get another question from the floor. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Said from UGL. I lead the People and Culture business for our transport sector. Question to the open panel, slightly touched on COVID, but it's more focused around how do we make Australia, or in particular Western Sydney, attractive for international talent. We've identified that, you know, unemployment rates are at an all-time low, capability is really genuinely drying up within this country. How do we attract people from around the world and I guess work together across industries but also with government to make Australia again more appealing post-COVID?
Thank you.
Australia sells itself. I'm not going to lie. Yeah.
We both come from like minus 40 winters, so like it's not
Not
a
an issue.
nostalgia.
Yeah. And that's the same to the people that we've brought in, like the migrant work we brought in from Germany, from the States. They came to visit Australia and they're like, yep, so like that's it. So I think that type of play and having, organizations like Destination New South Wales not just be, hey, we're here for vacation, but also we're here for migration, I think is really critical.
And I know Jennifer will have a very strong point of view, but I think Western Sydney in particular has so much to stand for. The Powerhouse Museum is an inspiring beacon of the future of technology. WSU is just won #1 in the world for a climate sustainability tertiary education centre. You have the largest, fastest growth population. The average demographic is 5 years younger than Sydney, which, when you think about that, we've got the most diverse group of people, so access to global talent. We've got future and fresh ideas. We've got an international airport being built here. So to me, all the underpinnings of an incredible, thriving community are there.
I agree with all of that. A couple of quick things. I think you have to make beautiful places. I mean, I think you've got to make places that people really love living in, particularly like the sort of skill sets we're talking about, but everyone really. Like, that's why it's called the Parkland City that we're working on at Greatfield. We want, as the plane lands, for people to think, hey, this is a park, not parkland, not a park obviously, but this is a parkland. This is a different looking city. This is green. This is incredibly beautiful. And then we'll talk about this on the next panel. You've got to make culture a real centrepiece because people want things to do as well as work. But Australia does sell itself. We do need to do a couple of things. Got to get migration settings right. And I think the summit was, really, I don't think people have valued enough of what a reset happened at the summit around migration. So before the summit, migration contested. After the summit, migration not contested. The second thing I think we've got to do is give people permanent pathways, which we've talked about, and what I would do if I were in charge of anything would be to kind of give Dharma Plus, faster track access to permanent migration in Western Sydney. Because suddenly then you're sort of like, whoa, okay, if I'm in Calgary or if I'm in the US, I think, hey, this is looking good and I can use my skills.
Sam, what's your thinking on that, particularly from multinational? Can you get the people you need?
Listen, we've got a skills challenge here, but as Jennifer said, I think the Skills and Jobs Summit really helped focus people's attention on the solution. I think and I agree with everything obviously the panel has said. I think that the other challenge here is how do you make the environment one that is cutting edge. I think young people of today, and we've got our workforce here is it's a whole spectrum obviously, and you've got millennials who have got a slightly different attitude compared to people maybe of my generation. But I do think we want an economy that is cutting edge, that's diverse, that is truly reflective, that is inclusive. If we get all of that right, the rest of it will sell itself. But I think we have to focus on that as well. We want the world to know that what's happening with the AMRF, with advanced manufacturing, is world class. It's not second class, it's world class. And we've got a workforce that's diverse and inclusive.
Interesting point. Another question? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Rick Graff from Bill Borger. We've partnered with Hewlett-Packard Enterprises who are trying to redevelop their 40-year-old infrastructure. But a dry old business park isn't where a lot of the high-value employees want to work. They want to work in a mixed-use lifestyle environment. In New South Wales, we've got particular difficulties with the planning system, and the Department of Planning is not necessarily receptive. Is this something that you've found where you get a trigger to fast track that sort of development? Because Singapore and Melbourne are interested in the innovation hub that Hewlett-Packard want to develop, and New South Wales is dragging its feet.
Look, yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I could do a whole panel and a whole day and possibly a whole month on the planning system. But we do have to get this right, and that's something that the authority has got to, we're working on now through our concierge service that we will try and fast track these planning approvals, because you're absolutely right. If we're competing with Singapore, with the US, and people can get a planning consent in 3 months, and we're taking 36 months to get the first stage of the planning consent. We won't be able to do the decarbonisation because, you know, these projects are complex, they're big. I'm thinking nationally. So look, it's absolutely something I'm committed to through the authority, that we will work to fast track these planning approvals, you know, getting the kind of planning instruments right, like the master plan for Bradfield, making sure that as we do that master plan, we pre-approve, if you will, as much as possible. So that if you know, when I was Planning Director General, as many of you remember, we had a thing called Part 3A, a very controversial piece of planning law. But the purpose of it was to say, if you meet that test, you will be approved. If you do not meet that test, you will be refused. You know, the next best answer to yes is no. It's not 7 months of, you know, reworking things. And so I think we've got to kind of, you know, we've got to make Western Sydney not just all the stuff we've been talking about, we've got to make it the easiest place to do business in Australia and the easiest place to do business in the region, because that's what we're up against. We're up against Singapore, Hong Kong, you know, places in the US where it's really easy to do business and do big projects. You know, this is something with my BCA hat on, with my authority hat on, you know, you won't get the argument from me. But the other point I make is we've got to build community trust too. We've got to build we've got to build beautiful things that are consulted with the community, that set a new standard for the environment. And that's what we want to do at Bradfield, that it's the most famous city in this part of the world for the world's best building materials, for the lowest carbon footprint, for the first hydrogen-enabled city. And we need the development community to kind of get to the frontier, because that in and of itself will build community trust in a planning system that needs to be faster.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ray Dr. Jones from the Centre for Western Sydney. Kind of coming back to the skills crisis and the challenges that we're facing, the other half of the Jobs Summit was looking at the way in which, you know, already existing workforce in the form of the underemployment of women, or the lack of women being brought into the labour force is a challenge, or it's an untapped resource. And I think Danielle Wood talked about, you know, if we understood women as part of the labour force as, you know, a rich seam of iron ore or a gas resource, that, you know, we'd be throwing all sorts of money at it to extract that opportunity and that economic opportunity. Advanced manufacturing engineering is probably one of those areas that doesn't perform as well in terms of employing women. And I guess I was wondering what your thoughts were in that side of the jobs question, that yes, immigration is definitely one part, and I'd say it's a really important part for a short term, but a long term strategy is about making our advanced manufacturing a female friendly industry for women to think about going into.
Absolutely. Steve, you want to kick off?
I guess I will, yeah. First off, when it comes to like just diversity policy, et cetera, in engineering, it's very egalitarian. So it's just who's the best applicant, right? And that's typically how we treat it. Sophie's the best, like flat out. It doesn't matter gender, any background. When it comes to the diversification or the cross section, again, that's more policy, right? I mean, I would love to see just more applicants, period. Just the volume of applicants increased for the positions we have, because we need them, right? What I can say is that even if there aren't, you know, engineering students that are being matriculated in the universities that are, you know, that are women or any other gender, to that note.
Look, it's you can't be what you can't see, and I think there's a bit of an eminence challenge that comes with that as well. And it's hard for women to understand what the aspiration opportunity is. And yes, we have a large number of female graduates. In fact, we have more female graduates in our tertiary education centres than we do, obviously, flowing through to executives. And we know that there's science behind why they're not moving into different middle management and then through to executive roles. I can't answer for the entire gender, of course, and I definitely can't answer on behalf of advanced manufacturing. From my perspective, I do believe it's storytelling, being able to share the experiences that cross all of the different areas of the ecosystem that creates the opportunities for women. And I do think that women in these roles also have an obligation and sometimes an opportunity, but more than anything, I call upon all of the men in the room that are in manufacturing that are able to share and ensure that while we may have a equal representation at certain levels, we're also ensuring that we're providing the same platforms and opportunities for those women at other levels when they may have stepped out of the workforce for maternity leave or other caregiving opportunities. And we're recognizing those caregiving opportunities as experience, not laggards in their career.
And just to pick up.
Yeah, please do. Yep.
I'm not the one to speak on this when it comes to, Andrew's already said it all, but, you know, Romar, we have, you know, our production managers are female, right? And it's like, we just look for talent at the end of the day.
Sam, did you want to wrap up this one?
Yeah, just one thing that comes to my mind. So GE, we're a pretty, you know, we need to do better on diversity. There's no doubt about it. You know, we've got lots of engineers in our business. But last year, for the first time ever, we had more men take carers leave than women. Now that was part-time carers leave. And so this was young early career men who've got family obligations, who are actually taking that care. And culturally, we're supporting, you know, as a business, we support them doing that. But I actually, you know, highlight it because I think it's really important. In fact, you know, I know when I was their age, I had to take a career break to spend time with my daughter. Now these guys don't, and I think that's really important. So I think it's a complicated issue. It's complex, but ultimately we have to do much better in this space. And I think it is happening, but there's more to be done.
Just one quick thing to add to all of that. I think there's some macroeconomic settings that I think were pretty firmly agreed at the summit around paid parental leave, triggers to share leave better, childcare, etc. The thing that we probably didn't spend enough time on is changing people's expectations of life, and that's about early childhood, and that's about career counselling, which is done really badly. That's about, you know, wanting to make sure that young women, you know, don't have to sort of correct in their 20s to go to a career in advanced manufacturing, that they start thinking about it when they're 3 and they're 5. And people might say that's ridiculous. It's not. The data is in. You know, if you haven't started to get those digital competencies by the time you're 5, your life is going to be a game of catch-up. So I think we've got to change young people's expectations. So when I went to Rome yesterday, I was like a kid in a candy store, right? I was thinking, you know, it's like women's cricket. I wish I was born 30 years ago, because, you know, that's the sort of stuff I would have loved to have done. We've got to kind of excite young women about the opportunity, and also design jobs differently. And this is not just for women. You know, there's a whole untapped group of people who are wanting to work and wanting to participate, who are disabled, who've got poor foundation skills. And we keep designing jobs that just take them out of the system. So let's kind of rethink that a bit.
We've got time for one last quick question. Thank you.
Lisa Middlebrook from the University of Sydney. You've touched upon some of my question and some of your answers, but in terms of immigration, the key point I think about immigration is being able to help serve a workforce, but at the same time not returning to the higher unemployment rates with youth unemployment, and particularly over 45, over 50. Some of the fastest growing poverty rates in Australia and homelessness rates are with women over 50. And all you've got to do is go to Martin Place at any given lunchtime and you'll see how many women over 55 or 60 you see. There's virtually none. Have you got some ideas about how we might work together to reskill, retrain, or expand the workforce to make sure we don't return to higher unemployment rates in youth and older people?
We could pick this up in the next panel because Andy will be on that panel, and
Yeah, sure.
I think it sort of deserves.
Why don't we do that? And Andrew Charlton will be here as well.
Yep. Because it's an important.
Okay, no, we'll do that. So we'll pause. We'll have some lunch. We'll be back with our second panel. But please put your hands together for this wonderful group.